The best builds are those that can be used across any skill level and be effective. The best builds can also be used with a variety of weapon types and exotic armors, so you can mold the build to your playstyle. This Hunter Strand build checks both of those key points. At lower skill levels, the constant spam of Threadlings will be enough to overwhelm your enemies and finish them off around corners with ease. Enemies will rush in against your threaded Spectre and die, and at high level gameplay, even if these abilities aren't enough to directly kill your enemy, the misdirection that Threadlings cause and the confusion that threaded Spectre causes to an enemy's radar is enough for you to secure the win. The build can also be used with any exotic you want and still be effective, but I'll be highlighting a few of my favorite exotic armor pieces later in the video. So today I'm going to be covering the best hunter build of 2024, the threaded Spectre Strand Hunter, and cover all the basics like the build setup, the armor mods you should be running, and then go into more gameplay specific tips with the abilities that you probably didn't even know you could do with the build. Dim link for the build will be in my Discord, link for which will be in the comments or description below. There are two main ways to play Strand Hunter. The first is what I call the go fast playstyle. You predominantly rely on grapple grenade to hurl yourself from point A to point B at lightning fast speeds, and then you use ensnaring slam to trap enemies after being in the air. It's a very flashy playstyle that excels if you're already a very good player, but in reality, for the average or below average Destiny PvP player, that playstyle is going to get you killed more often than not. The second playstyle is what we're covering today, and like I mentioned, it excels at every skill level. Even if your movement or aim isn't very good, this build will dominate. So let's start with the main ability of the build, Threaded Spectre. This aspect, when you dodge, leaves behind a decoy. Now this decoy is stationary, has 175 HP and lasts up to 12 seconds. When the decoy is destroyed, or if it detonates, which happens if an enemy is close enough to it, it will cause up to a maximum of 100 damage to enemies nearby and spawn 2 Threadlings, which also cause their own damage. Threadlings with the right fragment setup each can do 45 damage each, so without anything added on top, a Threaded Spectre can do a maximum of 190 damage. Now Threaded Spectre has tons of ways it can be used, many of which are overlooked or just not known about to most players. Most players tend to use it reactively. They see a player rushing them, they dodge backwards to create some distance and spawn a decoy, which the enemy runs into and kills themselves. If the enemy isn't already weakened by your gunfire, then sometimes you're going to need to maybe chuck in an extra Threadling grenade as well to secure the kill. Threaded Spectre can also be used reactively when you're losing a gunfight from afar. A plain hunter dodge makes the opponent lose aim assist, and then Threaded Spectre exerts a magnetism towards your reticle so your aim can go all over the place. This is accentuated even more when you use Wormhusk, which pairs very well with this maneuver and can turn a losing battle into a winning one. But another method is to use Threaded Spectre proactively. Threaded Spectre actually pings the radar, so if you position your Threaded Spectre well enough, it's going to really distract your enemy. They're going to push all the wrong angles. This really becomes super effective when you use something like 6 Coyote, which allows you to have 2 Threaded Spectres at once, so doubles the confusion. Then if you have multiple teammates running this build, then you can literally have 6 Threaded Spectres out at once, and the 3 enemies also exert a radar ping. 9 radar pings in total is really going to cause a hell of a lot of confusion for you guys. Threaded Spectre also exerts an aim assist magnetism for enemies. It pulls your reticle towards it, so it actually works incredibly well as cover. You can deploy a Threaded Spectre down, whether that's reactively when an enemy starts shooting you, or proactively in a lane, and then hide behind it and shoot your enemies, and trust me, they will really struggle to shoot you. It's a mighty effective way of essentially deploying down cover in a place where there isn't any. If you've placed your Threaded Spectre down wrong, or it's not doing much in an engagement, then what you can do is shoot it yourself. If you or an ally shoot a friendly Threaded Spectre, you do 150% increased damage. So unlike an enemy, just one hand cannon headshot is enough to break it and release 2 Threadlings, which can track your enemy and apply some pressure. And sometimes this is the better option if your Spectre isn't doing anything. Your second aspect is going to be Widdow Silk. Now when we pair this with our Threadling grenade, it means you now have 2 Threadling grenades, each which can deploy 3 Threadlings. And as I mentioned, Threadlings do a lot of damage, 40 at base, 45 with the fragment Thread of Evolution. If an opponent hides behind cover or is running away, this is often enough to finish them off. Even if it doesn't kill them, the Threadlings will cause your enemy to run around, often flush them out of cover, or it will cause them to shoot at the Threadlings, which gives you a window of opportunity to push them or reposition. Trust me, shooting Threadlings with a weapon like a hand cannon is a pain in the arse. Their hitbox isn't that large, and unless you have explosive payload, you have to be quite precise in cleaning them up. My other fragments all synergize with my Threadling grenade. Thread of Generation grants grenade energy whenever we cause damage, and with constant Threadlings and weapon fire, you're going to be doing a lot of damage to enemies. Thread of Ascent is really good because it reloads your equipped weapon when you throw a grenade, as well as providing you with AE and handling. So now if you throw your Threadling grenade, or even use your Threaded Spectre with Marksman's Dodge, any of those abilities will reload your weapon so you aren't caught with your pants down without any bullets in the magazine. The final fragment is Thread of Finality, which provides me with 10 recovery. Because we don't use Suspend in this build, I didn't find much use for any of the other fragments, and I prioritized the stats from Finality instead. The super in this build is the weakest part. It's got a really long cooldown of over 9 minutes at base, and then when you pop it, it's really squishy and has no damage reduction. Your grenade when you pop your super will be replaced with grapple no matter what you're running, so you do have a little bit of mobility, thank god. Because you don't have ensnaring slam with this build, you can't always yeet yourself in and suspend enemies with your super. So my recommendation will be to pop the super behind cover. Don't grapple into a group of enemies, especially if they know you're coming, as they will team shot you down. Instead, use your grapple sparingly to close distance on an enemy running away. But yeah, you're often not going to get this super in a trials game, but don't worry, the point of this build is that the neutral game is so strong. Now that Bubble and Well got a nerf in terms of how fast they get their supers, it doesn't always come down to supers in trials as much. In terms of stat priority for the build, the number one stat for this build is 100 mobility, which will reduce your dodge and Threaded Spectre cooldown time significantly, as well as the other benefits of high mobility like increased strafe speed distance, which helps you win gunfights. 100 recovery and 100 discipline are tied in second place in my eyes. 100 recovery is going to reduce your downtime in between engagements, whereas 100 discipline will really reduce that cooldown time for Threadling grenades. In reality, if you don't have a triple 100 build, you'll probably split the stats between the two here. Make sure you have a minimum of 3 resilience, which is the minimum I'd recommend for hunters to help survive a lot of key weapon thresholds. Then go for strength and intellect in that order. In terms of armor mods, regardless of what exotic armor you're running, this is the sort of setup you want. The aim of the mod setup is to minimize your grenade cooldown because your dodge comes back so fast naturally anyways. Your helmet, gloves and chest piece are going to have the relevant targeting, dexterity and unflinching mods based on your weapon loadout. Your boots will have 2 stacks of innovation and 1 stack of absolution, so when you pick up an orb of power you gain back more grenade energy. Your cloak will have 1 reaper, so after using your Threaded Spectre, a kill will generate an orb of power. And then I also run 2 bombers to gain back even more grenade energy whenever we dodge. You do not need anything to boost class ability regeneration. Trust me, it comes back very quickly anyway, especially with the exotics we pair in this build. So in terms of exotic armor pairings, the best thing about this build is it works with so many exotic armor pieces. It works with virtually every neutral exotic hunter piece. If you want to use Stompies, Gemini Jesters, Wormhusk, Knucklehead Radar, or even Oathkeepers if you're a bow main, the build works amazingly well with all those exotics. But there are 2 in particular that I really want to highlight. The first is Frosties, which reduces the cooldown of all your abilities for just sprinting around. This works incredibly well when you're playing Checkmate and your ability cooldowns are reduced. This one exotic bypasses that and allows you to spam abilities in a game mode where ability frequency should be reduced. This exotic also lets you have more grenade uptime than the other exotics, so if you're someone who relies on their Threadling grenade more, then pick this. The second is 6 Coyote. 6 Coyote gives you a second dodge, and because your cooldown is so short on your dodge, on a lot of trials rounds, competitive rounds, you will have 2 dodges up, so you can use your Threaded Spectre more proactively without being penalized in case someone rushes you. I found for Threaded Spectre spam, 6 Coyote is truly number 1. Being able to deploy 2 Threaded Spectres just seconds apart is very powerful and probably overpowered. My preference overall is for 6 Coyote, but for Checkmate, Frosties is very good. But yeah, the exotic you use is going to be up to you and your playstyle, and with this build you aren't shoehorned into a specific exotic, which is a massive win in my eyes. So there you have it, my complete guide to the Threaded Spectre Strand Hunter. It's definitely the most powerful and annoying hunter build out there currently, and even if they nerf the uptime of Threaded Spectre in the future by like 50%, giving it something like the Mask of Baccharis dodge cooldown nerf, it's still going to be very, very powerful nonetheless. If you enjoyed what I talked about, then remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel for more Destiny builds, both PvE and PvP. I'm Mr. Ronit, and that's it for today. Peace out, guys.